in town and in the village, and we'll all be anxious to hear. A couple of ground rules before we start. Number one, so everybody knows, I am recording this session, and I will send out the link to the recording to our constant contact email list. If you are not on that list and wish to be, send us an email at catuitcivicassociation@gmail.com and we'll add you to that list. Secondly, I have muted everybody. There is a very strong and solid reason for doing that. With this many people on a call, my experience is that if people's mics are opened, you get a significant amount of feedback, not to mention the background noise that you might get, which can be very distracting. And in fairness to everybody, I would ask that you stay on mute throughout Jessica's discussion. If you have questions, and I'm sure you will, the way that we will try to do that to stay orderly is to ask you to type those into your chat function. You will see the bottom of your screen. And then I will, when Jessica is done, I will read those questions to Jessica in the order in which they're posed so that we don't have to keep clicking mics on and off. And if you do chat in a question, please identify yourself so that I can announce you when I read the question to Jessica. That's it on the preliminary remarks. So with that, I'll turn the meeting over to Jessica Grassetti. Jessica?
Thank you so much, Jim, and it's good to see everybody. And so the new term, mute yourself. So I'm starting to tell my grandchildren to mute themselves instead of quiet themselves down. What a world we're living in right now. It's unbelievable. Let me begin with the COVID update just for the town of Barnstable today, which I'm very encouraged by the numbers I'm seeing. Right now in the county of Barnstable, there's 1,635 confirmed cases, and the Cape Cod Hospital and Falmouth Hospital, respectively, each have one patient. No one in ICU as of today. And in the town of Barnstable, there's been 390 positive cases of COVID. You'll have to defer to the fire chief to get the numbers for the village, but it's very low, which is a good thing. You know, I think one of the biggest issues in not only Precinct 7, but the entire town of Barnstable since March, when we've seen an influx of summer residents coming to their homes and people kind of escaping the cities because of the COVID, the amount of pedestrians and bicyclists on the roads, and the competition for the right-of-way on the roads. And you know, when you pair that with the landscapers and vehicles and workers and trucks coming into the village and throughout the town, one of the biggest complaints I get is pedestrian safety and complaints on vehicle speed throughout the village. And this is not just a problem here, it's town-wide. I know in Centerville, there's drag racing going on a nightly basis in an area in Centerville. And it's just, you know, we're a small community and our roads are very narrow, and we do not have sidewalks throughout the villages. So, and everybody wants to be outside, and I don't blame them. But let me, and I noticed Jim did put something in the currents about walking against the traffic. If you're running or walking against the traffic, that's a good thing if there is no sidewalk. If you're on a bicycle, however, and I have to stress this, especially in the village for kids going down Old Shore Road, which is a one-way, if you're on a bicycle, you need to follow the rules of the road as if you were a vehicle. You run with the traffic, you stop at the stop signs, and you make signal to turn, and if you are following a bicycle in a vehicle, the bicycle has just as much right to be in the road as you do. and you don't pass that bicycle until it's safe to do so. So let's try to be safe for everybody's interests. So I just wanted to start with that. One thing you'll notice, a new feature in the village was some sawhorses, and now they've been removed and there's been painting on the corner of Main Street and Putnam Avenue. Again, this is a pretty heavily traveled intersection, and pair that with the people going in and out of the Katuitt Grocery or the Katuitt Fresh Market. And there's very limited space from what was parking beyond a driveway to the corner of Putnam Avenue. The town has decided that we're going to eliminate the parking. There was really only one legitimate parking spot there, and now they've removed that and they've striped it so you can no longer park from the driveway to the corner of Putnam Avenue. But that's in preparation for a new crosswalk that will be put on Main Street to cross from Main Street, the sidewalk on Main Street to Putnam Avenue. Now, I know there's been discussion over the years about putting a sidewalk on Putnam Avenue. That's not happening right now. And I know there was a lot of pushback to implement something like that. But we have a lot of pedestrians and children especially that like to cross the road there and walk down to Old Shore Road. So we're going to put, and there was talk about putting a three-way stop there. Instead of that, I've requested that we do a raised crosswalk at that area to slow the traffic down that's coming south on Main Street, and see how effective that is. Right now, the crosswalk will just be painted, and then they'll let out a contract to have a company come in and do a raised crosswalk similar to the one that's on School Street, to slow, traffic calming is what it's called. The town has a unwritten policy that they won't install speed bumps, if you'll call them, in the middle of a roadway. But if you combine it with a crosswalk, they're more amenable to doing something like that. The other place I've requested a crosswalk is on Main Street where it meets Old Shore Road. There's a crosswalk on both the east and west side of Main Street there, but the one on the east side abruptly ends at Old Shore Road. So if you're walking and you need to cross over to the sidewalk on the other side, the crosswalk there will allow you to do that safely. And there's also a nice line of sight coming both ways so that when you are crossing, you can do it safely. Again, that will be just painted and then converted to a raised crosswalk. And the third spot that I've requested a raised crosswalk, there's already a crosswalk there, but I've requested a raised one to slow the traffic down, is on School Street at Piney Road. It's unbelievable. And, I've said this, I grew up on School Street and my parents still live there. And when I go to visit them, I'm shocked at the speed of which people drive down that road. It's unbelievable. It's a straightaway. And ever since the town over-engineered the redo of School Street and putting sidewalks on both sides of the street with granite curbing, it has become a speedway even more so. So if we can put a raised crosswalk at Piney, and then they'll meet another one at the post office, hopefully they'll get the message about slowing down. Believe it or not, one of the biggest offenders, Lieutenant McKenna tells me or Sergeant McKenna, excuse me, is our local drivers, especially the younger drivers. When he goes out and does radar traps, the most people that he stops are locals. So we have to be mindful of that. And if any of you have children, just tell them to slow it down. Towards that end, I am working with the town attorney. I will be bringing before the town council, which has to be voted on, to adopt Mass General Law, Chapter 90, Section 17C, which allows the town of Barnstable to adopt a 25-mile-an-hour speed limit in a thickly settled area as well as business district. Now, the Precinct 7 has it really doesn't even have a business district. All the businesses here are pre-existing non-conforming, but what happens is we have a 30-mile-an-hour speed limit on Main Street. There's a 25 on School Street. There's, it's kind of, and we have a 35 on Putnam Avenue. So when you combine all of them, the average speed in the village is about 35 miles an hour. And so if the town adopts this rule, then we can put 25 miles an hour on Main Street in Katuitt, and the police have the authority to issue violations if you're going over so much over that speed limit. So if there's a 30-mile-an-hour speed limit and someone's going 35, the chances of getting stopped are slimmer than if there's a 25-mile-an-hour speed limit. So again, with that, I recommend that if you're traveling in the village, drive 25 miles an hour. And you might have people tailing you, but if everybody took it down a notch and didn't rush, I think it would be safer for everybody. So I wanted to start with one of the biggest issues in the village, and that is that. For the parents of children getting ready to think about going back to school, I know it's July, but the school department has until the end of July to come up with a plan, and the school they presented to town council. And they're developing 3 separate scenarios. One, and this is what they're hopeful will happen, that it'll be a full in-person school year. And if the numbers in the community keep going the way they are, then I think that's hopeful. The second scenario would be fully remote, and the third would be a hybrid of the two. So I know a lot of the families are anxious because it's unknown right now, but the superintendent has assured us that in the first week or so of August, she'll have the definitive plan on how to proceed with that. I want to talk a little bit about the water quality in the town. If you don't know, I do have a blog, and I update it pretty regularly. And on the front page is a water quality and a link to the updated reports. And if you'll see, Ropes Beach was closed because it tested poorly, but then it was reopened a couple of days later. It was closed just for 2 days, but it's back and it was tested okay. Lovell's Pond remains closed, and that's because of cyanobacteria, which is blue algae. And this has been happening to all of our ponds and lakes throughout the Cape, and the results of which are excessive fertilizers, but most prevalently from the septic systems and our cesspools and septic systems. So there is also no bottom pond. There's an advisory for no bottom pond. However, that's not listed. I did list it on my website. However, there's no public access to No Bottom Pond, which is off Rayland Road and off of Kings Grant area. And I'm not sure if I'd want to swim in there. I know there's a lot of snapping turtles in there, but Lewis Pond has a way to water, and that one is okay. So let's hope that that stays that way too. Just staying on the water quality issue, phase 3 of the dredging for the Sampson's Island and Dead Neck, the beach nourishment project, that's been approved, and a grant was received, a $500,000 grant was received for phase 3, which is the final phase on removing the tip, if you will, of the island where it the cut into Katuitt across from Riley's Beach. There's some hope that that can commence September 15th. It normally commences in October, but we'd like to see it start with phase 3 September 15th. I'm not sure if that will be permitted to start that early or not. And it usually runs until January when the winter flounder start running. So, you know, the hope is that not only will it make navigation safe, discourage kids from swimming from Riley's across to the tip. And I know as a sailor, it's made navigation a lot easier to get in and out of there and fight the flooding tide. And we're hopeful that it will also improve water quality in the Katuitt Bay area. I know some of you frequent Loop Beach, and you'll notice that there's parking lot attendants at Loop Beach, and they're limiting how many cars are parked on Loop Beach. It's a very small piece of sand. And everybody's been very, very mindful of keeping their distance and coming in groups. And let's hope everybody, you know, keeps that up so that we can keep the beaches open. And the town manager wants the beaches to remain open, and all the beaches are being heavily used. And that leads me to the issue of trash, which is another issue, another sore spot. Okay, so years ago we had a dumpster at the town dock, and that dumpster has been removed, and it was replaced by big bellies or solar-powered trash compactors. And if you'll notice, there's one of those at Loop Beach, down at Riley's, and at Ropes Beach. And for the most part, in those areas, people just put their little lunch bags in and or their cans or coffee cups, and it all works out well. Or even their dog waste bags. However, down at Town Dock, which is also, you know, it's the most heavily used area here, it was found that even with 2 solar bins there, people were disposing their trash outside of the bin, and the town would have had to come three times during the day on a weekend in order to keep up with the trash. And people were abusing that by bringing home trash and leaving that outside the trash receptacle. So now the town has implemented what you pack in, you take out. And I think that's a good policy, like they do in all of our national parks. You know, you carry in your trash, you bring, you know, your lunch and beer. I guess you're not supposed to be drinking beer, but you bring your libations out on the boat. You bring them home and you dispose of them in your own trash. So let's hope that people can, because usually there's a cleanup, and the Civic Association's been very good about hosting a cleanup day in the spring, and that was canceled this year. People are very reluctant to pick up trash because of COVID. So whatever you can do to keep the streets and the beaches clean is really helpful. Speaking of trash, this is another big a change in the transfer station, formerly known as the dump. The transfer station, it used to be that you could get a recycling sticker, and that sticker was free. And you could bring your recycles, your paper, your plastic, and on your glass and cans. And you could, if you had pickup at home of trash, you wouldn't have to pay your hauler to take your recycles away. However, with the change in the economy and frankly, China no longer wanting anybody's recyclables, the cost to dispose of the recyclables has become more so than the solid waste trash. So the town has been losing a significant amount of money because of offering free recycling. That free recycling has ended. And the trash transfer sticker allows access, and that's $250 a year. It did not go up this year. We held firm on that. I expect that next year we'll probably see at least a $25, probably a $50 increase to dispose of trash next year. But right now it's $250, and it allows you full access to the transfer station. And if you don't want to pay to dispose of your trash, there is a kind of a pay-as-you-throw program, and you can dispose of I think it's 5 bags for $20, or I don't know. You'll have to check the transfer station's website, but you can bring a certain amount of bags, and that allows you to get into the transfer station, and at the same time you could dispose of all recyclables at that time. So
Yes, maybe I'll jump in with a couple of questions on topics you already touched on.
Absolutely.
That before you move on to other things. So
certainly. I know I'm covering a lot, but there's a lot.
No, which is why I wanted to jump in before we get too far away from the topics that people had some questions about.
Certainly.
First question is from Stan and Terry Goldstein. They note that in Marston's Mills at Route 149 has some type of manually actuated traffic control lights. And we're wondering if it's possible to install such a system on Putnam in Maine.
I can certainly inquire about that. There was one that was supposed to be installed on School Street, and it was met with a great deal of opposition. There are constituents in this village that have counted the number of signs throughout the village and have informed me of the hundreds and hundreds of signs. And the last thing they wanted to see was very bright yellow flashing signs on School Street. Can certainly, and they were slated to be put in. Last minute they were removed. As long as they alert people that there's a crosswalk coming up, that's the signage that they were okay with. The other suggestion was at the intersection of Main Street and Ocean View Avenue. I know that's now a 3-way stop. It also is one of the busiest crosswalks, and it has been since March. I first thought that why couldn't we have a flashing light there that would stop the traffic, so you could continue on the way, but if the traffic light got actuated by a pedestrian, then it would stop the traffic. However, the cars coming down from Freedom Hall come at such a high rate of speed, they wouldn't have time to stop if they all of a sudden were met with a flashing light at the last minute. So that's why that remains there. But I think what we're going to do is start with the raised crosswalk there and see how that works before we go installing flashing lights. remember
Yeah.
too that Route 149 is a state road and not a town road.
Jess, there's another question about traffic from Steve and Jean Mojo. The comment is, while I don't advocate speeding, what is the genesis of the speeding limits? Are we seeing accidents? Most of the year, the pedestrian traffic is relatively limited. And finally, are the speed limits a consensus from the Katuitt-Santuit Association or just from selected residents?
Well, the speed limit, I think everybody wants to see the vehicles slow down, and we're in a pretty populated, congested area here in the center of the village. And who knows, adopting this Mass General Law is something that the entire council has to vote on. It's not something that gets voted on by just me. It's the entire town council that has to adopt it. So I'm going to be looking for input from the chief of police and his traffic division as to whether or not the town should adopt this. This was my suggestion to try to bring all the speed limits to 25 because it varies throughout the villages and throughout the village. As I said, it's 30 miles an hour on Main Street, but 25 on School Street. And perhaps it should be more consistent. And that was the genesis for me looking at that law.
And I would add that we have heard a significant amount of comment from people who live on Main Street and in the surrounding area about great concern about this rate of speed of the vehicles, particularly at this time of year. Mm-hmm. One other question on water quality, and Jess, is that Pete Prikaki asked, can you please comment on the town in cooperation with Mashpee's water quality improvement efforts in Popponesset Bay and Shoestring Bay? And is there any place where people can obtain updates on that effort?
Well, that's part of the CWMP, or their comprehensive wastewater management plan, and the council gets briefed per my request at the second meeting of every month. And the latest update, which you can find right on my webpage, is Dan Santos gave to us. He gave to us at the last council meeting. You know, not that the COVID is going to halt any further advances on water quality. And we're hopeful that we can proceed as we've outlined. Our CWMP plan has gone through the MEPA process, through Mass Environmental Protection, and it has to go through various state and federal organizations in order to be adopted, and then we can start implementing that plan. And the next step for implementation of the plan is for the council to make fiscal policies. Shoestring and Popponesset Bay are considered in the latter phases of our plan, which used to be a 60-year plan. It's been reduced down to 30 years. I'm hopeful that the discussions with Joint Base Cape Cod, sending effluent from the western part of the town of Barnstable, as well as portions of Mashpee, will be successful. Maybe for not only treatment, but for disposal. And we're in discussions with Joint Base Cape Cod to partner and with organization to take over their wastewater treatment plant that is in need of flow, and it's also in need of upgrading. So I'm, it all can't come soon enough as far as I'm concerned, as far as water quality. I also am encouraged when I hear organizations like the Barnstable Clean Water Coalition, who's working on piloting a program at Shubel's Pond, which is in Marston's Mills, which is not actually part of the comprehensive wastewater management plan because of its location. However, they're looking to do a pilot program with alternative septic systems in that area. And in order to successfully pilot this, they need over 45 systems to gather the data, and they have to do so many years of data collection. But that might be an alternative to sewering. But realize too that Katuitt and Papaneset, or the Papaneset shoestring area, is in the final phases of our comprehensive wastewater management plan.
There were two other questions.
The other thing with that too is I was encouraged to see that Mashpee did vote to build a new plant, wastewater treatment plant near their transfer station, which is up gradient of Shoestring Bay.
Two other traffic-related questions, Jess.
Mm-hmm.
Will there be a crosswalk for the parking spots in front of the coop?
No.
Hear it. Here. You're on.
Sorry, if you joined, would you please mute yourself?
No, there isn't. They won't put a crosswalk there because there's 4 or 5 parking spots there. So if you park furthest away from Putnam Avenue on that side, then you'd have to walk along the cars to walk across the way. They will not be putting a crosswalk at that location. They would only do it where it's in relationship to one sidewalk or another, or at an intersection.
And from Chris and Ray Sexton, we're regularly seeing vehicles flout the 30-mile speed limit on Santuit Road. How do we slow down people on secondary roads?
Let's see. Well, that's the same thing. So anytime you want to contact me, and I will put in a request to the chief of police and ask the traffic division to to concentrate on a particular area. And I will put a note right now. So which Santuit Road? What part of Santuit Road?
Well, one in particular is a question about the newly paved area close to the School Street end.
No.
Yeah. Hi, this is Chris and Ray Sexton here. We're actually new to Katuitt, about 2.5 months full time.
Welcome.
Thank you. We're very excited to be here. Thank you. But yes, we are south of School Street, but sort of on the way into the point that Santuit Road feeds into. So there's a ton of everything from construction to residential traffic, and it's a zippy little area here.
We have dogs and kids, and these people wail through here, and they're not doing 30 miles an hour.
Mm-mm.
Okay, and that's the other thing, the 30 mile an hour, when they see 30 mile an hour, they push it to 35 mile an hour. So maybe if it's 25, they kind of get the point. But anyway, I'll request that the chief have some enforcement up in that area.
Jess, I think people would like to get your blog address. Not everybody has it.
Oh yes, it's Barnstable Precinct 7, the number 7.com.
Okay, well, why don't you pick back up on what you were going to be discussing, Jess, and then I'll come back to the rest of the questions.
Okay, let's see, where was I?
You just finished water quality, I think.
Yeah, water quality. Let's see.
Dump and recyclables.
I'm sorry? I think I said everything about recyclables that I was planning to say, but if you have a particular question about it, I'm happy to
No,
talk.
I'm sorry,
I
Jessica.
think
You
people were
you
just
were
trying to
finishing up
identify
at
where you
the
were.
dump. Yeah, that's where you ended.
I ended at the dump. I thought I ended at water quality. I'm sorry. I'm all confused. So you might notice too that you see surveying crews. Oh, that you, I'm getting feedback.
Yeah, please, everybody mute themselves.
The fellow that says owner, maybe you could mute yourself. And I think that's my father. Okay. So you might have noticed survey crews around the town of Barnstable, and they're starting to survey for wastewater treatment pumping stations, and they're coming as far out as Old Post Road in Katuitt. So if you see them there, they're not going to be constructing anything, but they are going to be surveying. And what they are looking for is depth to groundwater as well as elevation, so that they can design the pump stations to accommodate gravity feeds to treatment, sending it back to the wastewater treatment facility. I did want to move to the Waldorf School because in the Katuitt Elementary School, which was the previous Waldorf School, because on Thursday at 5 o'clock, the Asset Management Advisory Committee is once again meeting, and the Katuitt School will be on their agenda. Again, I put this on my blog with the address or the meeting ID for Zoom. There's no password, just a meeting ID so that you can watch the meeting. So up for discussion, and I was very encouraged by all the people that showed up at the first meeting discussing this. It was great to see. David Anthony, who works for the town, has been charged with coming back, looking at the analysis of keeping the fields for the village use with extra parking and with a possible on-site small building that could be leased out for revenue. That's one scenario. Another one is to analyze on separating the parcels and discussing single-family homes, density, and affordability. Another one is analysis on the current water quality and the current flow with the current septic. There is an old septic system that's part of the school with putting 3 single-family homes or density in housing. So there's, it's a 13-acre parcel that the school sits on. It's also, and I see we have a water commissioner here, and it sits up gradient of one of our wells, or our a significant water resource. So the water department's very concerned about the future of that acreage. There's a lot of competition for that site, as you can imagine, because I've heard everything from the Katuitt Fire District wanting possession of the building, perhaps relocating the fire station there. There's been talk about relocating the post office to there and having other municipal uses. Realizing too, and the folks that are new to the village, we have a fire district as well as a town of Barnstable, 2 totally different municipalities. And sometimes they're in competition with one another, especially for your money. So I encourage you to join that meeting. There is going to be, after the analysis and the discussion with the committee, and this is the committee, the Asset Management Advisory Committee will advise the town manager. The town manager is responsible for all of the assets in the town of Barnstable. But he's looking for some direction, and he's assured me that nothing's going to happen to that property until the village of Katuitt has their say on what on what they want to happen there. So public comment is on the agenda, and it's at the end of the meeting, so you'll have an opportunity to listen to the meeting and then weigh in with your questions and comments on that. So nothing's going to happen right away. That committee, the Asset Management Advisory Committee, which is made up of town councilors, will report to the full council, and then eventually a recommendation will be made to the town manager, who will make the final decision on the fate of the building. It's unfortunate the school gave up that building for surplus, and it's a building that was built in the 50s, and it's coming up on, it's beyond its useful life, especially the mechanical systems, which would all need to be replaced. There's asbestos in the school. So when you look at the analysis of keeping the school and renovating it, or tearing it down, it's almost best to look at tearing it down and building a new facility. But that's, stay tuned for that one. And that's a major decision for the town, because it's something that's used by a lot of different entities within the village. So I want to make sure that we stay on top of that one. Any other questions there, Jim? Before you're muted, Jim.
One person asked to confirm the date and time of that meeting and the link to that meeting. You can get it on Jessica's website, and I will be sending out a notice to that effect on Constant Contact tomorrow.
It's July 23rd at 5 p.m. and the meeting ID is 964-3416-8902.
And again, there's no need for a password, folks. It's just you sign on with that meeting ID and you'll get there.
Yeah.
People want to hear about the short-term rental issue, Jessica?
Certainly. Right now, there's this is another subcommittee of the town council, and that's the Zoning and Regulatory Review Committee. And they, since the state, since the new law came into effect, taxing those that rent their homes for less than 30 days or less than 31 days, they are now taxing those folks like they would a hotel or a motel. And the monies from that go to the state, but they also come back to, a portion of it comes back to the Cape and will be put, or is going to be put into a fund to help with water quality throughout Cape Cod. And we do have representation, and actually our town manager is on that committee, and will do his best to see that the town of Barnstable receives monies back from the short-term rentals. But because of that new regulation, there has been issues, because this community and Cape Cod, people have been renting their homes for decades, and oftentimes to the same families. And I know for a fact many homes in the village of Cotuit have been rented to the same families year in and year out. And those families have gone on to buy their own home in Cotuit after coming here as a child with their families. So I, for one, don't want to see the elimination of families being able to rent out their homes. However, what's being proposed is a change in zoning that specifies to certain some of the problems that have arisen around short-term rentals. Parties coming in, a lot of people flooding in with cars, and kids, coming in for a weekend and holding a razor, a weekend keg party, and it's turned the neighborhood into pretty pretty unbearable for some folks. So there's two items before the town council, and one is a change in zoning that specifies that these short-term rentals can be anywhere in the town of Barnstable, which they are right now. They're allowed essentially everywhere in the town of Barnstable. The zoning before the town council, and I have the information. Again, this is also on my website, and I updated it recently so that you can keep apprised of what's going on with it. But the item is Council Order 2020-192 is the ordinance, and 2020-193 is the amending the zoning pertaining to short-term rentals. The committee's had a lot of discussion about this. There is other organizations or other civic associations that have signed on. They're concerned about the stays that are one-night stays, two-night stays. I think it's safe to say that they're not so concerned about the week stays as they are about the 1 and 2 night stays, which essentially turns them into a hotel. So, and that has me concerned too. So it's still in, I'll say in committee. It was before the planning board, and the planning board continued the zoning item because items of zoning go before the council. They get referred to the planning board, and the planning board has to take action on the item. And then once they take action, the item comes back to the town council for discussion, deliberation, and voting. So I don't know. They have a meeting at the end of July. The planning board has a subsequent meeting on item 2020-193, and I will post when that meeting is as well on my blog. But once they vote, then it will come back to council. I don't know if they'll vote by the end of July, and which means it will come before the council on August 20th. Which will be another opportunity for the public to discuss that matter. The public hearing remains open at the planning board. So if you have any, comments, you can make it to the planning board. But the planning board they are not the ones that will vote the item in. It would be the town council. So you will still have opportunity to speak at town council about that item. I haven't heard a lot of complaints about short-term rentals in the village. I've heard more complaints about homeowners having parties as opposed to renters. So, you can have a terrible neighbor just as well as, I suppose, as you could have a terrible renter. But, I don't want to deprive someone from having income on their home so that they can keep a home on the Cape. So I won't, I haven't made up my mind about the zoning ordinance, but I have questions about it.
Jessica, on that topic, Phil Jones says that in addition to not wanting less than 7-night stays, it's important that absentee investor ownership be addressed. Can that be discussed?
Well, in some regards, when you talk about investor-owned properties, I'm not quite sure. There's been discussion that may be a bit of a red herring. If a property is owned by a trust, for instance, you don't know the who that trust is. I suppose if it's owned by, Hampton Inn, it's pretty clearly evident. There's very little evidence in the town of Barnstable that the short-term rentals that are taking place are owned by large corporations. And so I'm not sure, how to address that. Remember too, the ordinance that's going in place, the registration that's going to be required and the licensing that's going to be required to run a short-term rental requires that the property owner be listed, that there's, contact information. I would like to see an interactive map on the town and Barnstable's website so that you would know, and I would also like to see notification of abutters so you know if someone is applied to have a short-term rental in the neighborhood, and so you can have a contact number should there be any issue. There have been very little calls for enforcement for noise and whatnot on short-term rentals, which was the genesis of a group of people that came forward wanting to eliminate short-term rentals across the board. They want there's a faction of people that want to see that only in commercial areas, and I think there's been I just don't see that that's doable. That's not what Cape Cod is. Cape Cod, people want to be able to rent out portions of their home, or rent out their home, or they have bought the home and they want to retire here. And I suppose you could call it they've invested in the property, but can't afford to live here because they have a job somewhere else or they're raising a family somewhere else, and they want to keep that home to retire here. So there's a lot of moving parts with this issue, and it is an issue that has to be, we have to regulate it for sure. And we want to make sure that if you are renting your home or if you're renting a home, that you're going to rent a home that's safe. Just like renting a home year round, you have to register that home year round. It's inspected for safe egress and in sanitary code, and we want the same for short-term rentals. Do we want to see one-night stays? I think that when the survey went out, I think you'd be surprised how many people that do rent their homes say they will not rent one night. It's too much work, especially now with COVID and having to turn over a property and clean everything. I know there are people in the village that have stopped renting this season because of COVID, because it's too expensive and it's too onerous to have to clean and make it safe for the next occupant.
Jessica, a related question is relates to noise levels with short-term rentals. Is there a way to include in the zoning a change to noise ordinances? Also a note by Pete Prokocki that many short-term rental companies install noise detection devices that text noise to owners. I don't know if that topic has come up in the course of the various and lengthy discussions that the committees have had concerning short-term rentals or not.
Yeah, the noise ordinance, we do have one in the town, but this zoning item does not expand on that, on the noise ordinance.
So if people have a concern about noise levels, they should report it.
Absolutely, and that goes with everything. If there is something that, if you see cars parked all over the place, if they're parking in the street, if there's loud parties, after, I think it's after 10 or 11 o'clock at night, call the police. People are afraid to call the police. They're afraid of, retribution, but you can call anonymously, and the police are pretty cool about, saying, hey, the neighborhood's brought this to our attention, and they're not going to say, "Hey, your neighbor Joe next door, he's complaining." They're very respectful of your wanting to remain anonymous. So.
And where would somebody find out what the noise rules are for the town?
It would be under the code, which is available at the Town of Barnstable's website in our town code.
Got it.
Any other questions?
No, I think that we have done it for now.
Okay. Let's see. I wanted to kind of finish up with, if I could, just reminding everybody. I think you received in the mail the card that allows you to vote by mail, which a lot of people want to do. People don't want to come out to vote. Just a reminder, I think August 22nd, which is a Saturday, is the last day to register to vote. And the first election will be September 1st. If you return that card, you'll be sent a ballot, just as if you were voting by absentee. I've also been asked by the town clerk to put out a call for help at the polls. I think Cotuit's pretty well represented, and Precinct 7, we usually have one of the biggest turnouts throughout the town of Barnstable, but she's always looking for help during the election time. That was something I told her that I would be happy to pass along. So, the other thing too is just the fireworks, were canceled July 4th. The town manager has scheduled them for Labor Day weekend. So no parade, but fireworks anyway. So wanted to give you that information. And let's see. I think that's enough talking for me, unless there's any other specific questions.
No, I think we've covered all of the questions that the group had. On behalf of everybody, the Civic Association, as well as everybody who's on the call, I want to thank you for taking the time out of, I know you do a lot of Zoom these days, so we're very grateful for you to take the time. We're particularly grateful that as town councilor, you're always so available to people. And I encourage everybody to follow Jess's blog and to reach out to her when you have any questions, because she's a great public servant and we're all very fortunate to have her as our town councilor.
Thank you, Jim. I apologize. I usually hold my Precinct 7 monthly meeting at the library, and I haven't been able to do that. But I'm available anytime. And if I haven't returned a call or a text me again, because sometimes things don't come through, and but I like to respond. And if I don't know the answer, I'll try to get you the answer or direct you to someone that can answer your question. So thank you.
I can personally attest that that's absolutely true. So thanks again, and thank you everybody for attending. I will be sending out the link to the recording at some point in time tomorrow morning. I hope you all found it useful. Jess, thanks a bunch.
Thanks, Jim. Appreciate it. Bye.